Croix de Chevalier. By 1168, the knights controlled 20 castles, scattered from Turkey to Egypt. The director of the hospital had become, by this time, a soldier and administrator, and the title of Grand Master was born. The lay confrères adapted very quickly to the military life and began to fortify Acre in the north, where the Grand Master, Raymond du Puy, built another impressive hospital, then expanded the reach of the order in Europe, soliciting and receiving grants and more donations of land. Another military order was born at this time, the Templars, which quickly became a strong military power in the East. The Templars and the Hospitallers marched in battle together, flanking the cross, but competition between them turned into animosity, sometimes escalating into local battles. An attempt to conquer Egypt created a bitter dispute between them. The Templars refused to participate, and the Hospitallers had to retreat from the Caliph of Damascus, who came to the rescue and occupied Egypt. This had the unexpected result of unifying the Muslim world and providing the cohesive front that would prove lethal to the Crusaders. When power passed to Saladin, the fate of the Latin states was sealed. Saladin, a fierce and brilliant warrior, took advantage of the internal conflicts among Christians and mounted a series of deadly attacks, which culminated in the Battle of Hattin. In the wide open valley of Hattin, from where there was no escape, Saladin's greatly superior forces met and slaughtered the Christian armies. Almost all the Templars and Hospitallers were killed. And Jerusalem again fell to Muslim hands. By this time, there were so many captured Christians that in 1187, the price of a Christian slave in Damascus was less than a pair of shoes. The remaining knights escaped to the castle of Margat in the north. Acre became the new capital. Richard the Lionhearted launched the Third Crusade, and the knights expanded their hospital and fortifications, establishing a double line of walls, building Acre into a large and massively fortified city. The clashes between the orders continued. The Templars, who stood by the landowners' side, and the Hospitallers, who stood by the Pope and the monarchies, kept fighting against each other in local wars for political control of Acre. When they finally signed a truce and agreed to join forces in 1258, it was too late. In 1289, the town of Tripoli was destroyed. Acre would be next. In April 1291, the Egyptian forces started the siege of Acre. The Christians knew they were doomed. A month later, the overwhelming forces of the Sultan breached through the walls, weakened by the mines of the attackers. Thousands of Christians were buried under the collapsing walls. Only 7 knights came out alive. This was all that was left of the Hospitaller order. The Crusaders could not have survived 200 years without the reinvention of the medieval castle. A few hundred knights had to defend hundreds of miles of territory. They poured decades of warfare experience and engineering inventions into building the most efficient war machines. They produced stone fortresses that seemed impregnable and became the model for castle building for the next 300 years. Croix de Chevalier, in the words of T.E. Lawrence, was probably the most admirable castle in the world. As soon as they were given the castle, they began adding and upgrading fortifications. Towers, originally square, were transformed into round ones to reduce vulnerability to arrows. The entrance to the castle was the most ingenious military design. The ramps are a series of sharp bends, so that the attacker had no visibility. The ceilings had narrow slits to shower the advancing army with arrows and boiling water, and gates hidden in the ceiling would drop to trap the attackers. Crac de Chevalier, a self-contained city, could be manned by 60 knights, with a garrison of up to 2,000 men. It had an impressive chapel, a large 90-foot dining hall, and sumptuous accommodations. It could stock food for a 5-year defense. Sultan Bibars knew it would be almost impossible to take Crac. He mounted massive campaigns against all the minor castles, which fell one by one under the onslaught of superior and determined forces. Then he turned all of his might onto Crac. The castle, defended by only 200 soldiers, was so well designed that every time the Muslim forces broke through a defense, the knights were able to retreat into other fortifications. Only a ruse by Bibars, who sent a note with the forged signature of the Grand Master ordering surrender, caused the knights to give up the fight. The headquarters were then moved to Margat. This castle was built on the coast and was therefore accessible from the sea, even if the standard routes were blocked. Margat, defended by only 200 men, repelled the siege for over a month, but capitulated to an army of 10,000. In 1292, the surviving knights escaped to their headquarters in Cyprus. After so many painful defeats and the loss of the Holy Land, confidence in the knights' usefulness was shaken. Philip the Fair of France had borrowed heavily from the Templars in order to finance his war against England. Unable to pay back his debts, he ordered their arrest, accused them of heresy, and in 1307 burned most of them at the stake. Other royal houses were eyeing the immense estates of the Hospitallers. Only the protection of the Pope would spare them from a similar fate. Their holdings in Europe remained safe, and the sugar refinery in Cyprus, which supplied most of the sugar to Europe, kept enhancing their wealth. Without a mainland foundation, the exiled Hospitallers were forced to take to the sea. They started building galleys and a fleet. With its budding naval resources, the order helped Genoese merchants take the island of Rhodes from the Turks. The fact that this island off the Turkish coast had great strategic importance did not escape Grand Master Villaret. By occupying it, he made Rhodes the frontier outpost for the Western powers, and the order appeared as the only military organization that could revive the idea of the Crusades. The Pope promptly transferred all of the Templars' properties in Europe to the Hospitallers, who had their final revenge against their longtime competitors. Grand Master Fulk de Villaret gained the official endorsement of the Christian kings and consolidated all of the newly gained properties in Europe. After 19 years in Cyprus, Rhodes became the capital of the order. Villaret initiated an ambitious building plan that spared no expense. The Grand Master built an ornate palace for himself. and an expansive new hospital. The idea of the auberge, a separate residence for each nationality, was born in Rhodes. The knights from Provence, Auvergne, France, Spain, Italy, England, and Germany had all formed independent groups by nationality, known as the tongues, and each tongue now had their own lavish quarters. The power, independence, and earthly pursuits of the knights were becoming so pervasive